What's going on, everybody? C4 here, and welcome to tonight's second video, trying to recap the franchise community stream that was going on EA's Twitch. I already kind of made a quick video talking about the more updated news that they dropped about the QB1 Face of the Franchise mode, where you're basically going to be following a Cardale Jones-ish storyline. I jumped into that video. If you haven't seen that one, go check that one out. I definitely want to get you guys' feedback on that video. The more all I'm going to say is the more feedback you give me, the more the game could potentially be better at some point. That's all I'm, hey, we want to make the game better. I'm going to try and do what I can with my limited pull within this community to make your guys' voices heard. So today, it's another big one. It's franchise mode, and I'm going to probably have a video come out tomorrow that'll be a little bit more in-depth, a little bit more opinionated, because right now I kind of just want to relay what information they dropped and try to explain to you guys if it's good or it's bad. But I will state that at the end of the QB1 segment during the stream, Mike Young, who's now the guy that's kind of taken over the franchise, he's the top dog from what I can tell. He pretty much reaffirmed his commitment to franchise mode. And at its core, I mean, it feels like, I guess Rex, who was there a couple years ago, he was more of a gameplay guy than I guess a franchise feature guy, potentially. I don't know if that's fair to say necessarily, but Mike Young just keeps coming to reaffirm his commitment to franchise mode. And I just remember last year, before he got appointed, they had that, I can't even remember his name, but he came out and essentially said during the live stream that franchise mode fans are incredibly difficult to appease and all these other things that just didn't resonate with the community. And everything that Mike Young has done so far, and I think it's being well received, and I'm enjoying, and it's nice to see, and I think he's going to take this franchise in the right direction. That being said, let's jump into the context of the stream. For the franchise mode segment, they expanded a little bit more on the scenario engine. Outside of this X Factor traits, which we'll talk about in a little bit, the scenario engine is the big feature added to franchise mode, which I'm already so disappointed they didn't bring in coaching carousel, added that new dimension to the game. But we'll talk about that more in probably tomorrow's video. I'll make it themed top 5 features that are not in Madden 20 that we need to see or something like that. But they added the scenario engine. The scenario engine definitely is cool. And again, if it's another building block, like last year, the big building block was the archetypes. They brought it and refined it, retooled it for this year's game. So it seems like it's going to be a new fixture for franchise mode. And I think scenario engine is something that franchise mode has been lacking. So if that is the next thing that gets in Madden 20 that's going to continue to be carried on for future Maddens, I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. So the scenario engine is storylines. That's gonna pretty much make it so it's slightly more realistic. We already know from the teaser they dropped a couple weeks ago or a week ago that you're gonna have, if you put players on the trade block, you're actually gonna have some repercussions to that, or contracts and stuff like that. You're gonna get, essentially they're trying to say if you have diva players, you're gonna have to, or headache players, we'll call it headache players, you actually have to deal with those headaches. There's gonna be consequences to signing those players or bringing in those players, and obviously there's gonna be some positives to the scenario engines that I'll talk about in just one second. But they kind of just hinted at the whole, you put a player on a trade block, you got to deal with the negatives that come with that. But today they talked about there's going to be X Factor boss battles. So the example they gave out will be say if you're a quarterback, and your offensive coordinator will come in and say, well, we're going up against the Houston Texans this week. How do you feel about J.J. Watt? And then you'll be prompted to respond with a goal, saying I'm not going to get sacked once, or I'm going to throw for 400 yards. And then based upon this, it's going to give you different gradings of XP. I assume the more harder goal that you set, the more XP you're going to earn to grow and develop your players overall, which I think that's pretty cool. They said that the scenario engine will try and make the game difficult. So this is kind of referring to when you do the QB1 face of the franchise type thing, and then you get into the franchise mode after you're done all the cinematics of the face of the franchise, or if you start your connected franchise mode as a player, they're going to make it so that if you're going off, if you're just constantly steamrolling other players, they're going to throw in some little kinks with the scenario engine to try to make it a little bit more difficult. Now, I don't try to play on cookie cutter difficulty. Those are probably people that just, they play on pro and to brag to their friends they won 58-0, scored 7 touchdowns. This might affect them a little bit more. But, anytime the makes the game a little bit more harder, I'm kind of welcoming that because, I've reaffirmed my stance that the Madden doesn't know if it wants to be a game for casual gamers or the hardcore gamers. And every time they add a new feature, it does kind of feel like they're adding it to the casual gamer to make the game easier, to make it so that it's not, you don't have to put the work in to be good at this game. And the fact that they said the scenario engine at times will throw kind of a curveball to make the game a little bit more difficult, that is something that I like to hear. Another thing that they like to bring up is that the scenario engine also has a breakout player story arc where draft sleepers, so your mid-round draft picks, can get better goals throughout the season and gain more XP to realistically get better. We've seen that time and time again. Say if you get, you have a cupcake roster or something like that, and you draft a wide receiver, like a Mullins for my channel's content. We draft I don't know. We'll just say we'll just use PL Mullins. We draft PL Mullins in the 4th round. He's 65 overall running back, but he's like 93 speed. So I want to use him. In past couple Maddens, no matter how much you use him, if he's a 63 overall, 65 overall, whatever, I could get 1,300 rushing yards and 14 touchdowns. He might not get a dev trade increase. He might only go up 2 or 3 skill points because he was drafted as a normal dev, just run-of-the-mill running back. And it felt like regardless of what your production was with said player, the game didn't recognize that. The game kind of was stuck in its ways of this is the path that this player is going to follow. And you're going to have to have 5. Well, that's not 5, but you're realistically going to have like at least 2 good seasons back-to-back to take these unknown players and start to grow and develop them. And what they kind of came out and hinted towards is that because of the scenario engine, when you have a breakout player, he's got to, trying to trigger that story arc that, all right, well, the 65 overall player got 100 yards. Maybe say in relief duty. Say if a big player went down due to injury and this unknown guy stepped up and had 100 yards. Well, okay. Can he do it again next week? And next week is another 100 yards. That will trigger a storyline so he can start to earn a lot more XP mid-season so that you can just, you can get those guys, those diamond in the rough, those guys that are UDFAs that come out of nowhere and have big-time productive seasons and then go on to develop into franchise-type players. So I think that is actually really, really cool. Again, I'm going to have to be slightly cynical and say when you get these features in franchise mode that have a lot of moving parts, you got to be prepared just for it maybe not to work on launch. I'm not going to say that that's what's going to happen. You never know with these things. Sometimes new features work pretty, really well. I feel like Archetypes was brand new last year in Madden 19. And I actually think I posed the same question that, oh boy, I can't wait for these Archetypes to be bugged. And I'm pretty sure off the top of my head, I can't think of an issue that happened with Archetypes. So hopefully the scenario engine runs without a hitch. But when you hear all these different scenarios and story arcs, sometimes maybe it might not trigger when it's supposed to because it's so intricate. It sounds like, but we're not even gonna think like that. We're gonna give them the benefit of the doubt that's gonna work out the box, and I'm very, very excited to actually try it. And if anyone's listening at that, this is my challenge to you: make sure it works. And I'm gonna have to almost give you this little round of applause because the beta last year that you guys let a bunch of us actually get on and try, I think that's actually a huge step in the right direction for the Madden franchise because I do think we're able to identify a lot of these bugs that when the game was released in late July, early August, it was a lot more smoother than it had been previous years when there's no beta available. So that was pretty much all they talked about the scenario engine. I think ultimately that is a really cool feature. I don't want to be too salty because they didn't add coaching carousel or they haven't said anything more about relocation franchises and stuff like that because it's features I want it personally, but scenario engine is something that I think is going to be a big time bonus to franchise mode. And I want to hear you guys' thoughts about that in the comment section. They also mentioned that there's going to be a new dev trait system. Not super crazy, but the dev trait system for, last year got updated, but generally for the last couple of years, it's been superstar, star dev, and normal. We used to have slow, but they got rid of that, which, I'm not going to lie, I kind of like, there was a place for slow dev. Some players should never be good. No matter what you do, I feel like there's a place for that in franchise mode. No matter what you want, that guy's always going to suck, or it's going to be a daunting task to make him not suck. I feel like that challenge still should be in the game, but whatever. But they added another tier above superstar called the X Factor trait, which is going to be a big selling point of the game. I think they're going to actually have a stream with that next week, and I'll probably give you guys a little bit of a recap there. They said that mid-season dev traits can be earned, which is pretty good because right now it felt like the only dev traits you would get would be at season's end if a player made the Pro Bowl. So mid-season dev traits are good if they're rewarding a player that's going off, which gives you just that much more time to quickly earn the rating that they actually deserve, or at least the rating that they're playing up to. They said that rookies get hidden developments. So like say if you draft a rookie that has like a big time X Factor or superstar dev trait, it's going to be hidden until about mid-season. That's what they use for an example. So I think that's actually kind of cool. You're not going to know exactly what your first round draft picks dev trait is going to be. Now I feel like I'm a little bit worried about this in terms of how it's going to affect custom draft classes. This kind of all seems like these scenarios that they're throwing around the live stream are for the random generated ones, because obviously when I create a player, I'm going to know what dev trait he gets. So I feel like you might lose a little bit of that mystique. More so I will lose a little bit of that mystique using my custom draft classes, but that sounds, it's still kind of cool, and hopefully it's randomly generated, so I can make my custom draft class, and then it just still behind the scenes hides them and shuffles them around or something like that. But maybe that's too much wishful thinking. For these big time X Factor players, what he says is that you can only have 3 X Factors active on offense and max of 3 X Factor players on defense. So you can't be incredibly overpowered. You have to pick and choose. He didn't really go super in depth to this though. I assume they'll do it on next week's stream, but I think that could be good in terms of strategy. Like, it's like one of those things, if I'm going up against Drew Brees and a pass happy offense, and I have, you know, four guys on my D-line have X factors, 2 of my corners and 1 of my safeties at X factors. That given week, when I know that we have to stop a big-time passing attack, if I can just deactivate my D-line and just activate my secondary, you know what I'm saying? I think that will definitely help in terms of game planning. And if that's the case, which is kind of what I think, you know, reading between the lines from the stream, I actually think that's really, really awesome. And it's going to go a long way into franchise mode. And hopefully that ultimately has a positive impact on this whole cloud that hangs over franchise mode, where every game plan, every game generally feels the same, regardless if I'm going up against a big time passing attack, big time run defense. Either way, it feels like every team plays you the same way. Hopefully this is a trend in the right direction to make the game and each and every individual game to feel that much more unique. They said that the ratings have been completely rebalanced. He said 400 less players are below a 70 overall, so that players this year will commonly be in the 50s. Like, depth players, fringe roster players will be in the 50s, whereas in years past, like, the lowest average on a player's roster, you know, give me 2 years in, it's probably 65, 66. We're going to see a lot more players in the 50s. So the progression will last longer, adds more importance to player development, and it makes superstar players stand out more. So I think that's definitely a big time positive, but it will be a big adjustment to people, especially, you know, people like me that like to review and react to when they do the player ratings. I'm probably going to see a lot of lower ratings than I want to on my Philadelphia Eagles, so I'm already prepared so I won't get triggered. They actually said at one point coach mode. I assume that just means when you start as a coach in a franchise, but when they said this, there was like a little pause, and I was like, oh my God, they added in coaching carousel. They did not. They said that, you know, ultimately coach mode, that's what it was. It's just your option when you start as a coach in a CFM. The draft class generator will be changed to switch up the indicators. So, you know, example, when your offensive lineman has 32 plus bench press, you know they're going to be good. They're changing that up to make drafting harder. So it's going to take me probably a little bit longer to become the drafting god that I usually am. It seems like they hinted at more realistic schools, so you're not going to see a lot of guys from Penn and Beth Cookman in the first round. I hope that happens because that's ridiculous. The hidden dev traits that we just talked about for the rookies, I think that's pretty cool. They nerfed contract logic as well in franchise mode to make it more authentic. Same with trade logic. We're going to have to wait and see, though. But I've always just kind of felt with contracts and trade logic, if you want to exploit it, then ruin your franchise mode. If you don't want to exploit it, don't do it. I feel like that's kind of on the user. They added new schemes. They showed a screenshot of the air raid offense that wasn't in before. I think that's kind of cool. They've also tuned some of the other old schemes to maybe more so mix and match your player archetypes to get a little bit more creation there. And then lastly, they pretty much talked about the Pro Bowl, which is a selling point for that, is that you can play with a team stacked full of X Factor players. So if you're coming from a cupcake team that doesn't have any of these wow players, when you finally get to go in the Pro Bowl at the end of the season, you get to play with a bunch of superstars, and it's supposed to be a unique experience. But I've always kind of said that, yeah, you know, there's definitely a decent segment of people out there that have wanted Pro Bowl back. For me, it's not really a selling feature. I mean, I'd rather it in the game than not in the game, but ultimately I'm probably going to skip it more often than not. But for you guys out there that wanted it, you know, you already know what it's going to be about. So that is pretty much the notes from the franchise stream. They said there was going to be a Q&A, but they didn't do it because, you know, I would try to be spamming my question in to get it read. But ultimately, you know, I just need to get over the fact that coaching carousel didn't make the cut this year. I would definitely like to hear an explanation as to why, because I've you know, got a lot of feedback, and obviously maybe EA has their hands at a little bit more feedback, but the number one feature for franchise mode, no doubt, was coaching carousel and a different way to play franchise mode. And I don't know. I just want to answer that. But once I move on from that, I will get over it shortly. I definitely think it's got to be a better franchise mode experience than Madden 19. We have to wait for the gameplay, but I think there's a lot of positives that are going to be added into franchise mode. Enough so that it's going to be a little bit different. It's going to feel fresh. I do like the new color changes for the franchise. Just little things like that. It's definitely showing this thing, because I remember, you know, 2 years ago, the Madden franchise, the exact menus were the same color every year, and it's incredibly redundant. I like the fact that they're trying to at least aesthetically change it up a little bit. So let me know your guys' feedback from the franchise mode stream. Give me like features you want to see and stuff like that, because I think that will be a video that will drop in the coming days. A little bit more of an opinionated video, less me relaying the information. So yeah, make sure you stay tuned for that. And to do that, hit that subscribe button, because there'll be plenty of Madden 20 content coming soon. And I hope you guys did enjoy this video. Until next time, it's C4 saying peace out.